You're listening to the Speaking Tongues podcast. I'm your host, El Charisse. Each week, I sit down to a conversation with multilinguals where we discuss and celebrate language, life, and culture through our own perspectives. Episode 112, Speaking Wolof. Hello, language lovers. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Speaking Tongues, the podcast and conversation with multilinguals. This week, Awa is joining me to talk about her language of Wolof and her career as a translator. In this episode, Awa talks to us about growing up with Wolof and French as her first languages. She tells us where we're likely to hear Wolof used in Senegal, particularly in Dakar, and how Wolof is not just a language, but also an ethnic group. We talk about some basic grammar points, formalities, and honorifics in Wolof. And Awa tells us how people mix Wolof with French in Dakar and why it's incorrect to assume that everyone in Senegal speaks French. We also talk about diversity in West Africa, Senegalese culture in Paris, and the art of drum making and storytelling in Senegal. Big thank you to Awa for sharing bits of your language, culture, and work with all of us. If you enjoy episodes of Speaking Tongues, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the Speaking Tongues podcast on Apple Podcasts, and like and subscribe on YouTube so that other language lovers like ourselves can find the show. And if you've been a longtime listener of the show or a recent listener, you can now pledge ongoing support for the show on buymeacoffee.com or on patreon.com. And as you know, I wrote a book. My food zine of international language and cuisine, Taste Buds Volume 1, is available now for purchase. Check social media for the sneak peek inside the book and make sure you purchase one for yourself and one for your friends. Links to all platforms are in the show notes. Okay, let's chat. Welcome back to another episode of Speaking Tongues. I'm here today with Awa. How are you today, Awa?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. I'm so excited to talk to you about your languages and particularly about Wolof because this is the first time that I'm having a conversation about Wolof on the show and I have so much to learn and I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
Me too. How cool.
Very cool. I like to start each episode with the same question, and that is, what is your first language and which languages have you learned to speak?
Sure. So my first language is Wolof, but it's always a hard question to answer for me because technically I grew up with my father speaking mostly French to me since I was young, and my mom speaking Wolof to me. But my mother tongue is Wolof.
Okay. Did your dad also speak Wolof or only French?
Yes. So he did it on purpose because usually students or Senegalese young children get exposed to French when they enter kindergarten, where they will be taught in French. But in my case, my dad used to speak to me in French since I was born, so in the house before I went into the school system.
Yeah, that's cool that your parents decided to each do that.
To have both, yes.
Yeah, is that typical or were other kids kind
I
of?
would say it's typical for parents who are educated to do that because it's just it offers some sort of leverage later to the child, because if they can speak well French before going into the school system, it's an advantage for them. Like they won't go through that process of struggling, through kindergarten and then through primary school for the language. But yeah, it's very much dependent on, I guess, the level of education of the parents and and their willingness to do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in Senegal, education is primarily in French.
It is completely in French. So you do have now. Okay, I'll amend that. You do have a track, an Arabic track. So myself, I did do Quranic school where I was studying, both French and all the other topics, but also learning the Quran and Islamic sciences. But that is very specific, and that was specific to some kids. But generally, kindergarten is entirely taught in French, and primary school and so on.
Wow. Do people in Senegal also speak Arabic?
Not at all. So it's not the people who speak it generally went into the track for Arabic, but it's not one of the languages represented in the population natively.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
It's more like religious. Like if you
It is
if
more religious, yeah. So my dad come from a village known for the learning of the Quran, and because of that, I mean, because I'm Muslim also, and my family is completely Muslim, so there's an interest in putting your children very early on to learn the Quran, and also, I mean, it foster other things, because you're memorizing, so that really also help with your cognitive skills as a child, and then later they will decide if they want to continue putting their kid in that type of system or transition into purely French the French school system.
I see.
Mhm.
So Wolof is spoken mostly at home in the community with your family, your friends, et cetera, et cetera. And then French is spoken like where? Like in school
Mhm.
and
So so Wolof could be described as the lingua franca in Senegal, more even than French. So while French is represented technically in the administration, in school, so everything that is paperwork is done in French. There's no paperwork done in English. Government work in French. The TV is mostly in French for the news. I mean, you do have the news in Wolof, but then Wolof is really the language of doing things in Senegal because that's the language of the community. That's what everyone speaks, including people who are not ethnically Wolof, because Wolof, for maybe that's relevant information for the audience, that Wolof is both a language and an ethnic group. So
hmm
I am partly Wolof. So um, you have the native Wolofs who are called Lebu. And they speak really the pure Wolof. I mean, today if they spoke to me, maybe I would struggle slightly because the Wolof is untainted by French at all. It's pure Wolof, and
Cool.
but really the reality now is that the Wolof and all the other ethnies who have another mother tongue will speak Wolof because that's what everyone used to do, transaction, commerce, and just be in Senegal and talk with people because anyone who didn't go to school won't be able to speak French.
Wow. Okay. So it's incorrect, and I just want to say this for the audience to
Mhm.
understand. It's incorrect to assume that everyone in Senegal speaks French.
It is incorrect, yes.
Okay.
And it might be they might have some notions, because slowly, I mean, we'll talk about it later probably, but slowly you'll see that Wolof French words got into Wolof, and in Dakar especially we speak probably, I mean, it's nowadays a teenager who was born after 2000 probably they can't make a single Wolof sentence without a French word in it.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's a phenomenon of
hmm
language that is normal, I guess, but it is very incorrect to believe that everyone speaks French. Yeah, most in the rural areas, people don't have to; they don't need it.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me about Wolof. Tell me about the language itself. What is unique about it? What are, how do we form sentences? Is it a tonal language? How do we
Mhm, mhm.
communicate? How do we revere our elders, our parents, our
Uh-huh,
aunties,
uh-huh, uh-huh.
etc.? Like give me all the juice.
Well, I'm extremely, extremely excited to talk about that because especially I've taught Wolof now online for more than 7 years. And the thing is that as a native Wolof speaker, we don't really learn, the linguistics behind it. So
Mm.
it's only when I started learning that I went myself to teach myself, what's the language structure, what's the syntax, what's the phonology behind it. And so when I went onto my quest to know more about this language, it's truly a beautiful language. Nothing like um, doesn't look like anything else that I know. In terms, I know some languages structurally, and it's not similar to the structure of French or English or German or Russian. I guess it's not a tonal language such as Cantonese or Mandarin or Thai. It's a language that functions with the Latin script, though it used to be written with the Arab script too. And might be,
Wow.
yes, it used to be. So the structure, I don't know how it would be explained it for people to see it with their eyes, but basically we have all these different verbal systems. So for example, if I want to say something and highlight an information, there is a verbal system I can use to highlight an information. For example, if I want to say my name is Awa, I can say mangi to do Awa, or I can say awa la to do. I mean, technically, both of these sentences means I am called awa. However, mangi to do awa put more focus on the verb, because mangi, outside of this example, mangi is used mostly when we're describing something going on. So it's more the actuality or the time of the action that is more relevant. However, when I use another verbal system with la, awa la to do, or marse la them, I'm going to the market, I'm putting the focus on the information, what appear first. So when I say awa la to do, I'm saying my name is Awa, not El, not Fatu, not Aminata. It is Awa. If I say Marse la them, I'm putting the emphasis on Marse. I'm going to the market, not to the bank, not to this other place.
Oh, I see.
So yeah, depending on the verbal system you leverage, it's very interesting what you're gonna highlight. Sometimes you're gonna highlight the time. This is not exclusive to Wolof, by the way, because many languages have linguistic ways to do this. But in Wolof, it's the verbal systems that do it. And more interesting, the verb almost never change. You see, as in English, I work, she works, or in French, they will have an S, or in the future, it will have a suffix added to it. In Wolof, the verb usually would remain as it is, and then you'll have these object pronouns. Like when I say nakanga tudu, nga, la, lanyu, ngen, some of these pronouns that will change. And through the change of those pronouns, we can reflect verbal change and person change. So it's very structurally very interesting to study. That's all I can say without drowning the audience into grammar.
How do we distinguish past from present from future in Wolof?
So technically you have different tenses, if I could call them like that, though it is inaccurate to call them like that. As I said, I call them personally verbal systems, because they work more as a structure to itself rather than a tense that you would add or remove. So we have, for example, if I say dem na, that's I went, but dina dem is I will go. This is two ways to doing it. So technically you'd be like, oh, dina dem is the future and dem na is the past. However, with another structure, for example, if I say marse la dem, that's I went to the market, but marse lie them, I will go to the market.
Oh,
So you
okay.
see, only the middle word changed from la to lie, and that was enough, one letter to reflect the future. And when I teach it to my students, I teach it usually in terms of accomplish and unaccomplished. So what is done yet completed, static, never changes, versus what is incomplete, hasn't happened yet, or is a plan, will happen in the future. Kind of that's the way to see it structurally.
Okay. How about when we're talking to prominent people in the community, or we're talking to elders, even like our parents or siblings? Is there any significant ways that we talk to family, or we talk to, teachers, priests, etc.?
So linguistically, the level of formalities do not work as in French, like where you have the tu and vous, and if you mess it up, people will probably not talk to you.
Yeah.
I'm throwing shade.
Scandal.
I'm throwing shade at French for this, because I do not like. I don't like too much formality. I think it's a barrier to communication. But formality does exist in Wolof in the form of different expressions. So when I'm gonna greet you to say how are you doing, we have our generic salam alaikum, which applies to everyone, doesn't affect really formality levels. When I say nanga def, nangen def, which probably people who are familiar with Wolof will know, that's the first sentence they learn. How are you? That also doesn't have really formality attached to it. It's respectful for both groups.
Okay.
However, when I say lubes, which is a sort of what's up, that I can't say really to an old person, because though it means what's up, what's new, I can't really say it. It's more of a youngster way to say, it's like, just like you wouldn't go to your professor at the university and be like, yo, what's up? Like that just doesn't work. So we have different expressions that you would use. Maybe if I'm talking to the elderly, I would greet them by saying, oh, how's the health? How's the family? Oh, I hope you are in peace, or something like that. And maybe when I'm talking to a younger person, I'll more say things like, oh, what's up, or what's popping, or something like that in the equivalent.
Okay.
That's where formality is, not in the form of you versus the you form.
Oh, okay. I like that.
Yes.
And I like what you said, that formality is, you feel like formality is a barrier to communication.
In a
And
certain way, yeah. I'm not saying that we should, I mean, everyone should be called the same. Obviously there is, a form of respect attached to formality. But for example, the way it is in French, when somebody talk to me and tell me vous, immediately I feel there's a barrier that appears out of nowhere between us, and I feel like, oh my god, now I have to be careful what I say. I have to be, it's
I
it's just,
know.
it's an obstacle to speaking, to my opinion.
It's so funny because like I think I told you this. I'm learning French.
Yes.
I've been learning French for many years, but I've been serious about it for the past year and a half. And
Mhm.
it's like when I realized two things. Like one, when someone says vous to me, I'm like, oh God,
Oh
they don't
my
want to
God,
be
I
my
know.
friend. Like, what did I do? And then I
Yes,
try to get back on their two side. Like I want to
yes. I think every time my second sentence after somebody calls me vous is like, oh my God, you can use tu, no need to what we
Right.
call the vouvoiement.
Yeah. But then
Yes.
the second thing I realized is that because I've been learning French so informally and I've been having conversation with a French speaker once a week and we're friendly, so we
Mhm,
use tu.
mhm,
And then I realized like if I go to a French speaking country, I'm probably gonna upset some people because I don't remember the vous form.
mm,
And
mm,
it's
mm,
like if I'm just trying to ask somebody something quickly, like, do you have the time? Or do you know which way this train is going? And I'm
mm.
like, oh God, I don't remember the VU form to ask them how. And
Well,
uh
something can make you feel better is that, like, probably you will be forgiven because they will hear. I mean, if you do have an accent in French, they will hear that you're probably American, and you get a pass, I guess, in this case. Now I wouldn't be forgiven so much if I did it myself because I'm a francophone speaker, but
hmm
I'm a francophone, but yeah, no, I get what you're saying totally. Like, it's for those. That's where English is really nice because it's pragmatic. There's no such things for when you need to ask for the time. But I also don't think it's such a burden to French speakers generally, because
mm.
it's if they're native in the language, it's just natural for them. It doesn't cost them any effort. And maybe my opinion is definitely biased by the fact that I know how formality look like in different languages, and because of that, I can definitely feel that in French it's a burden for me. Yeah.
I feel I feel like relief that
Yes.
if it's a burden for a French speaker, then I will feel less bad about it because it's
Yes.
clearly not my fault. But let's go back to Senegal. Senegal is multilingual and there are so many languages spoken, not just the French, but
Mhm,
when we're talking about Wolof, and maybe we can narrow this down to Dakar, but
mhm,
how do you notice communication? Like do you notice people, well, you kind of touch on this a little bit, but like how do people mix the Wolof and the French
mhm, mhm.
and what is it like? I'm always so curious, like what does it sound like? Like if I'm walking through Dakar, like I can imagine what it would sound like. And but just like what does it sound like? What am I hearing? What languages am I hearing? And how are people using Wolof and French together or separately?
The closest equivalent to this phenomenon I can find is the Spanglish phenomenon, where
Okay.
people mix Spanish and English, and it's not that they create new words, because there's a big difference between what's happening in Cote d'Ivoire, for example, Ivory Coast, but technically Cote d'Ivoire, but
Cote d'Ivoire, yeah.
yes, what happened in Cote d'Ivoire and compared to Senegal, because in the French in Cote d'Ivoire, they've literally created some words, that became part. Some of them added to the French dictionaries because they've captured some phenomenon and created new words that literally were not French in the first place.
I didn't know
So
that.
yes, that's a different phenomenon. In Senegal, it's more like Spanglish, where English words, French words find their way into Wolof sentences. So, for example, let me think, what would we say? Like, they will say, oh, maa ngi dem marché, or oh, maa ngi seetaan journal télévisé, or like, or for example, for money, like, oh, 500 francs or something like that. Even though we do have our numbers is a good example. We
Mm,
have numbers in Wolof clearly, but the counting and the money system in Wolof is so tedious because you need to multiply by 5 and do all these things. I mean, it's tedious for me, probably because I'm very bad at math, but there's an advantage into using it. I actually advocate for that. I would rather we teach our kids math in Wolof because just there's an element, there's an added advantage to learn those concepts in your mother tongues. You don't need to do a double translation in your head. I mean, but that said aside, really it's like people will use the French numbers because it's more straightforward in their head when they're buying stuff, and that would be still understood in the rural areas. Or another example that I could find is like "ça va," oh salam alaikum nanga def, oh ça va, like "ça va," it's we do have "mangifi" or "jam rek," but we would say "oh ça va," and generally it's really the young generation. I mean, I'm talking about the young generation as if I was not young myself, but it's really people, I guess, the last 2-3 generations, not even 2-3, the generation of my parents is, yes, they have been influenced by French, but not so much that. It's really the last generation where they will mix both, and there are many reasons for it. Now, here's the part where it's an opinion. I don't want to receive any shade from Senegalese people afterwards, but I think most of it is related to that French might make you sound educated, which is unfortunate because, speaking French or not has nothing to do with education as a general term. It has something to do with formal education as we understand it in a school system, but that has nothing to say about the intelligence of a person or their resourcefulness or something else. However, because there was at some point a really, I don't know if it's a political effort or just a societal phenomenon of, speaking French, and especially speaking it the French way, make you sound more educated. So if you do have an accent, or you it would be the same in Anglophone countries that were colonized too, that if they have an accent versus if you speak like a British or an American person, one of them will signal a higher level of education or traveling or something like that. And so this is a cultural capital that people want to bank on. And so they would make an effort to speak it this way, or include it in Wolof, or it's just the way they learned to speak it. If their parents were speaking it that way, well, it's only natural that they also have remnants of that. So those are my hypotheses for why people will force themselves. I remember when I was in primary school, there's this thing, I don't know how to call it in French, we used to call it symbol, but like it's a sort of a bone that you have to wear if you speak Wolof in class. I know it's so scandalous why, but it's this is the truth. I'm not lying. Like we had to wear, if you accidentally said a word in Wolof, you had to wear that, or it's a punishment. It's so weird. And if I'm not mistaken, that's the same that happens in some countries in the world for autochthonous languages. So when there's an autochthonous language and a colonizer language, then because that's what's used in the school, there's an effort to make the other language disappear, in the school system. So when I was in school, I mean, I didn't think of it when I was in primary school because primary school brain, but now that I have perspective, I'm like, wow, that is quite scandalous to
Super
punish,
scandalous. So what was it like? It was a bone.
It's like a bone attached to a rope, and you had to wear it around your neck. And that would signal. I know, so it's humiliating,
It is humiliating.
For speaking your mother tongue. I'm not saying that the teachers during that time had in mind to humiliate the student. It's more of a correction thing. It's like when but yeah, I don't think they had the intention of humiliating the students, but nevertheless the effect was that it was humiliating, and especially showing clearly that, oh, you're here we only speak French, and no place for your mother tongue. And that has changed, though.
I was just going to ask if they still do that, or
I haven't set a foot in a long time in a primary school, but I would doubt if that would fly, because what I've noticed is that especially in the expat community, when we're far away from our homes, Senegal, we tend to give more value to our culture, because you have the nostalgia and all of that. So myself, I mean, it showed like I just had a renewed interest in my own language, my own culture. And whenever I go, I try to advocate for it, to make more people know about it. And I've seen the same trend in most of expats, unless they just don't want to do it. They usually they will have an attitude of defending their language, etc. And I could barely see them tolerating, their children going through that type of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
also generally the wind has turned a little bit where people understand, oh, there is some value in our languages. Why should we put them down? And so there are more and more books written in Wolof, more and more shows made in Wolof, more and more, yeah, really, really active. And just me teaching, I mean, I think when I was teaching on Italki, they sent me at some point a message telling me, you've taught to, I don't know, 100 something nationalities. And I was like,
Oh
oh my
my
God,
God.
there's so many nationalities interested in Wolof, and some of them just the curiosity of an African language, some of them, because they have some ties to Senegal, or many Senegalese who were not born in Senegal.
Mm.
So just this general phenomenon, and who I've been teaching shows me that the wind has turned.
I
Yeah.
love to hear that. I love to hear that so much. Tell me about Wolof spoken in Senegal and maybe other places where Wolof is spoken, like
Hmm.
Mauritania. Do you notice any do you notice well, if you've had exposure to people
Hmm. Hmm.
outside of Senegal who speak Wolof,
I
um,
have, yeah.
have you
So
noticed it change at all?
So for Mauritania, I wouldn't be able to say because just I haven't interacted with Mauritanians much. But the best example I have is Gambian. Gambian Wolof is quite different. They murdered some of our dishes and started calling them differently. I know when
Don't
somebody
start
hears
no
this, they'll
scandals here, Awa.
yeah, not start no fight between Gambians and all. Like I love Gambians actually, but yeah, there's a difference. It's a variant of Wolof in Gambia, though it's technically the same population, but it's the same you would see a little bit in the south of Senegal. So I think it's more of like that divide that is Gambia is within Senegal. And I teach Gambians who wants to learn Wolof, and
Okay.
sometimes they will tell me this term, and I'm like, wait, that doesn't mean at all that in Senegal, and they're like, well, that's what it means in Gambia. And so that's how I noticed that lexically there's some words that change. And for example, we call chebujan our national dish,
Hmm.
chebujan, which literally means rice with fish in Wolof, and they call it benchin, which means one pot dish. So
Hmm.
it's Wolof. Benchin is Wolof, but the dish is called differently. So if you say benchin in Senegal, people what are you talking about? Nobody will understand what you mean. And if you say chebujan in Gambia, you might be understood, but most likely not. So you see, these are the lexical differences that exist. But it's fascinating to me. It's wonderful that we have variants of Wolof.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. I recently found out that there is a sizable Gambian community here in the Bronx.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
like shocked. Did not know there were so many Gambian people in the Bronx of all places, like in the
I
Bronx. And like
know.
I'm from the Bronx, so
You're
I'm
from the
like,
Bronx.
yeah, it's like it's great to see like so much diversity, I think, in the Bronx when we usually know Queens as being the most
Mhm.
diverse part of the city. So anyway,
I
but then
lived in Queens, so I know I liked it.
right, right.
Yes.
Um, yeah, so but I didn't know that uh Gambian people spoke Wolof and then it was so different
Yeah.
from Senegalese Wolof.
I wouldn't say it's I would compare it to maybe what happens in lexically to Spanish in Latin American countries, where
Oh,
sometimes it would change. Not that it's a different language. It's not like I don't know, Portuguese and French, where like it's two different languages. So it's not that different, but lexically there are some things that are different, just like you would find in the Spanish of Spain and the Spanish of Mexico. They're lexically different, lexical differences. Yeah.
I see. I
Mm.
understand.
And the
Um,
accent, oh my God, like, I mean,
yeah,
every
tell me
time that
about
I
the
hear,
accent.
not the same accent at all. I mean, Senegalese people are known for having a very distinctive accent. When we speak French, you know immediately. Somebody who knows West Africa knows immediately that we're from Senegal, because first of all, we speak fast. I
Mm.
think your audience might notice when they hear this, like, oh my God, she speaks at the speed of light. I'm trying to consciously slow down, but yeah, we do speak quite fast as Senegalese in Wolof, and that affects the way we speak in French a little bit. And we have a very distinctive accent compared to the Gambian. So when a Gambian speaks, it sounds to me like when a Peul person from like Pular, a person from the Peul ethnic in Senegal speaks Wolof. So
Mm.
I will hear it. It's like when other ethnics speak Wolof in Senegal, I will know sometimes if they're Pular or they're Serer or they're Jula, something like that. So it sounds to me like that, but maybe I'm completely mistaken.
No, it's I love see one thing I love is accents and I love how language changes. I love what people are able to do with language. And
Same.
I think it's like really, I mean, obviously I'm doing this show, so I hope that I love it, but I love what people are able to do with language and I always love when um especially on a continent like Africa where the modern borders they're there, but like, people cross borders and people were
Mhm.
there long before those borders were put in
Of course,
place.
yeah.
So I love just actually seeing how regionally across like where, Wolof is spoken
Hmm.
or Pular or any language really. I just love seeing like how it spreads out and how it changes. And I think
Hmm.
it's so beautiful. It's
It
just
is, it is. And it's sometimes it's what people fail to understand. So it's both spectrum, like it's both two things. So at the same time, the African continent, I'm gonna talk for West Africa because I won't even pretend I don't understand the whole
yeah,
continent.
of
But
course. You
West Africa,
cannot. It's
no, you can't.
very
You can't. Just
massive.
just West Africa is incredibly diverse, beyond
Right.
what people imagine. And they
Yeah.
cannot believe when I talk to people and I tell them just in Senegal, when I compare, these languages, Wolof, Sere, Jula, they have nothing to do with each other. We're not mutually understandable. We do not have the same culture. We don't have the same traditions and practices, and cooking. Every little thing is different, and they have trouble believing in a small country as Senegal that there's so much diversity. But as you said, at the same time, that diversity, they organically we are similar. So sometimes when I go in Gambia, honestly, I can't recognize, like, to me they look Senegalese, or maybe Senegalese people look Gambian. I don't know, whichever you decide to say it. but to me it's the same people, really. And I mean, Gambia is inside Senegal, so it's the same people, to my opinion. And so there's the same people with different features, and that's what the how rich it is, the diversity there. And as you just rightfully said it, those countries used to be, I mean, during the 13th and 14th century, there was the Jollof Empire. Just wink wink, that's why Senegal has the jollof rice, the unique jollof rice, not Gambian, not Ghanaians or Nigerians. We literally had an empire called the Jollof Empire. I wanted to put that parenthesis right there. But coming back to the Jollof Empire, yeah, so this was a West African, state. It was across several countries. And because of that, never how do you say it? It's okay to see, or it's almost evident that we're able to see those similarities sometimes in the culture. I can see already people waiting to hit me with with sticks
Shots
for my
fired. Shots
for my
fired.
jollof rice. But no, I would be dishonoring Senegal if I didn't win that battle here.
No, it's all love. It's all
No,
love and
it is,
it's all in
yes.
good fun. And it's funny because I had I've had jollof from Nigeria. I've had jollof from Senegal, and I've
Hmm.
had like a jollof, like a f African fusion jollof,
Hmm.
and they're all good.
They
Like
are, yes.
they're all good. And I get like I'm staying out of this battle because this is not my personal lineage. So I will be
Yes.
very diplomatic, but no, like all the ones that I've had, I mean, they've been different, and some are more tomatoey, some are more or
Hmm.
less
Hmm.
tomatoey.
Hmm.
Um, and they're all, they all have their pluses. you know?
Yeah. Do you know what's even funnier about this battle? It makes me laugh because traditionally rice is not even part of of something that we would eat. So it makes the battle more funny, but it's just banter between us. So
Yeah.
it's always something that we can start off a conversation between us and joke about. So I love to talk about it because it's just something that brings us closer, that doesn't
Yeah.
divide us at all. But yeah, how ironic, because rice is a very recent development in Senegalese history, and there are many reasons for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, this is fun. I'm enjoying talking with you,
Me
Awa. This is a lovely conversation.
too.
So I know you spent some time in France. Were
Yes.
you in Paris?
Yes.
Okay.
I
Um,
studied there. Yeah.
for Senegalese who are in Paris,
Mhm.
where's the community? Where's the Senegalese community in Paris, and are they Wolof speaking?
Mhm.
How has the Wolof and the Parisian French become a thing? Like, how does that
Mm.
how did that come together? And like, where do you see representations, cultural representations in Paris of your Senegalese culture?
I would bring it larger. I would say in France, most of the Senegalese are probably in Paris and Marseille. Like that's probably where they would be. But the biggest diaspora, I'm wrong. I haven't checked the data or anything to confirm this. But my hypothesis is that the largest Senegalese diaspora in the world is in Paris. That's my
Mm,
hypothesis. So there's a I have an anecdote about this because remember the last presidential elections. I was still living in Paris and I had to go vote. And when I went out in the street, you wouldn't believe that Senegalese people were the only inhabitants of Paris. I mean, it was only Senegalese people everywhere. And I was like, oh my God, there's so many of us. But really it's just because we were going to the same place. But so I would say they're everywhere in Paris, and larger extent Ile-de-France, which is the
yeah.
state where it's not a state technique, but the department
Okay.
where Paris is. So they're everywhere there. I don't know a single department where I haven't met a Senegalese. They're all over France, and it's for a very simple reason. It's because the colonial ties. So it makes sense. Just like you'll find a lot of the Commonwealth in the UK. That's
Yeah.
that's the same. And in terms of Wolof, so it's difficult to answer that question. I would say that you'll find two trends. Some parents who will really make it a priority to maintain that cultural background for their kids, and they will speak Wolof at home, maybe to teach it. I personally I know families who do this, and it worked out. That's how they thought. Because anyway, their student or their child will learn French in school, so they speak only Wolof at home to maintain
Hmm.
it. And I've seen also the complete opposite, where it's forgotten because the parents themselves have spent a substantial time in France, and so they've lost themselves much of their culture. They don't leave at all the culture or the religion, and so that will transfer also to the children, who will be no different than the French kids.
Mm.
So these are the two trends. Now, I just don't know enough to know the proportion of one or the other. I would say that there's an economic benefit in stripping, I guess, the culture, because they might think, oh, my child will integrate easier, especially that France is one of a kind country in that
Mm.
spectrum, where the politically what they aim for is assimilation, where you throw your culture out of the window. I'm harsher on this topic because I've lived it personally, but really that's the reality. It's like you throw your culture and religion out of the window and then you adopt. That's what French government, I guess, or the French system
Yeah.
will call integrating. That's a very different notion from integrating in the UK or other Anglophone countries, where it's not assimilation. It's like, oh, you can celebrate difference, just like in America. You can celebrate who you are, and still follow the rules and everything. So yeah, that's why parents will definitely have an incentive into just not pushing too much the cultural angle for their children.
I have feelings about that.
I mean, I'm not afraid to talk about those things. I almost believe that it's not talked about enough, and I do have legitimacy in this case because I'm a product of Senegalese culture, born and raised, and I'm also a product. I'm a citizen of the world. I've been to enough places and seen different cultures and ways of integrating people that I can allow myself to criticize the French model of integration. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about the storytelling in
Mhm.
Senegalese culture. I understand that there's a very rich griot
Super
culture.
interesting. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. I'm even ashamed, about myself about this for not knowing so much about it too early in my life because I mean I grew up around the Sabar culture, which is our drumming art. So like the both the art of making it's a very complete. It's a whole industry. The art of making the drums, and the art of performing with the drums and all the traditional history and storytelling that goes with it during the ceremonies, weddings, etc. The singing and the praising going with it. So it's so rich, and there's so much to know about it, especially for historical and
Record keeping.
yeah, record keeping. Yeah, so that's very it's an untapped potential almost. And yes, as I said, sabar is like the art of drumming, and the drums themselves are called sabar. One name to retain for that is Doudou Ndiaye Coumba, which is the most prominent drummer of Senegal. And I had the big opportunity to subtitle some of their documentaries. I don't think they're out yet, but some of the documentaries about them, and I learned so much. Them talking about the art, how their grandfather. This is the grandchildren speaking. So there's just so much history there. And obviously you've seen Balach, which is like really the singing. It's not traditional. It has been modernized now a lot, but really it does reuse that drumming. Most of the
Mm.
bass for Mbala is actually drumming if you hear it. And we have something we call tasu. Tasu, and tasu is the way of praising, but it's very interesting because those women who do it, mostly it's women, they're very educated about the history, the lineage of names. So
Mm.
if you tell them your last name, now it's harder because people marry between ethnies and stuff, but if you tell them your name, like my last name, for example, they'll be able to tell you, who your grandparents are, who your former like
Wow.
great grandparents were, what the story, what type of people were you? Were you travelers? Were you nomadic? Were you this and that? So it's so great when I hear it during weddings. I'm like, oh my god, it's how did they do? And obviously they're so proficient at it, and it's extremely clever the way it's like poetry, it's like slam. So there's the rhythm, the rhymes, sorry, not the rhythm, yeah, the rhythm, also the rhythm of how they say it, how you will say a sentence and then wait a beat and then have the sort of the pun or the drop down. It's extremely clever linguistically. It's clever, like just how I can describe it, fascinating. And so there's all this legacy that is right there.
How does this oral tradition moving into the digital age?
So right now I would guess that there is still limited effort into keeping this into records from Senegal and the Senegalese government, if I can say that. I haven't seen, at least on my end, any giant initiative to record those things before they get lost. However, some partners, external partners, are doing it, because I've been contacted several times by either universities or specific people doing documentaries about Senegal, who are trying to get these things recorded for studying purposes, especially African studies departments and that type of thing.
Mm.
So there's an effort there, but to my opinion, it's still untapped. It's still kept orally. And to come back to answer really to the question where you were what you were asking about the storytelling, it's something that has been here for, I don't know, I mean, it has been here for decades and decades and decades, maybe centuries. And one ethnic to retain for this is the Gewel. So the Gewel are the in French we say depositaire, but I don't know how to say that in English. So they're sort of the gatekeepers for this
Mm.
art. And you have the Tug, which not the Tug. Let me think. Yes, the Tug is generally, they're another ethnic that are associated with the arts of making drums too. But the gewels, excuse me, I'll amend that. The thugs are more the forger, they're the iron makers, it's something else. But the gewel are the gatekeepers of this art, of the art of making drums. Dudu Ndiaye Coumba was part of that ethnic, and they're just groups of people, and then they pass this out from fathers to son and from mothers to daughters. That's how it
Okay.
works. Yeah, and there's most of it is not written anywhere. It's really oral completely.
Let's talk about translation. How has the translation field and translating you do what do you do? Wolof to French, French to Wolof, French and
I do
Wolof to English? Like
I
what's your
do
path?
French, Wolof, English, all those three in every direction,
Okay.
and I'm looking into adding Spanish. So
Oh,
I'm
okay.
here literally for that right now. But so yeah, like mainly French, Wolof, English, every direction, and yeah, what I would say is the major change I've observed is that now there are more and more efforts of localization versus,
Mm.
or internationalization into Wolof. And if the audience doesn't know what that means, it's localization is like, the effort of transposing a product into a different market. So how do you transpose, I don't know, selling one particular product in a French market versus the Senegalese market? How do you make, I don't know, an application that was used in a different country
Yeah.
more easy to use in this country or more understandable? That's an internationalization is doing it before the product is made, meaning designing product with that in mind. So because I studied this in school, and I work with clients that do that, I've seen just more and more demand into that sector. So now people are seeing the interest in providing material in Wolof rather than just in French, because French is the official language, to capture a larger segment of the market. So it's still very niche, very tiny, but more than I've seen, more than ever before. And in terms of translation, I would say most of it is generally in the other direction, from Wolof to French or from Wolof to English.
Mm-hmm.
At least when it comes to my business, it's my biggest market.
Okay.
Now in the other direction, usually it would be, I guess, something that is cultural, that they have to have in Wolof. But because people don't really read in Wolof in Senegal, it's tricky. So that's the state of things right now, and based on what I know from the translation industry.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
For anyone who wants to work with you
Mhm.
and anyone who wants to find you, please let us know how we can get in touch with you online.
Yes, so I have a website which is www.thewoloftranslator.com. So they can reach out to me, and I mean the email is same, is thewoloftranslator@gmail.com. That's where I receive my business inquiries, and generally I'm on LinkedIn and on most social media, on Twitter and Instagram too.
Great.
Thanks.
I will add those links to the show notes for this episode so that people who are
Thank
interested
you.
in Wolof translation and they and also learning Wolof as
Yes,
well.
learning the language, we offer many things. So translation, interpretation, transcription, subtitling, and also interpretation.
Hmm.
So, for people working in business and stuff.
Yeah. Get in touch, friends. Get in touch with
Get it?
Awa. She's
That
amazing.
was the minute of promotion.
Get in touch with her. Awa, thank you so much. I really
No,
enjoyed
no worries.
speaking with you and this conversation. Oh my
It,
goodness.
it it's a
So
pleasure
much
for me,
fun.
really. It's such a pleasure for me, and as I told you, really, the reason why I accepted is primarily that I don't think my culture is discussed enough. It's, in some parts of the world, people will be like, "Wall of who?" or like,
Mm,
Senegal, what? Like they have no idea what these things are. So if I can, put a dent into this problem,
yeah.
I would do it every time. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, this is why I make this show because I want to see content that reflects languages that, like you said, people may not even know is a language. People may not
Hmm.
even think about it. And it's like, but
Hmm.
there's this whole country and this whole region here of like amazing, beautiful people with delicious food and a
Absolutely.
beautiful language. And
Absolutely.
you should care about this. Like you should care
Yeah.
about this. And we're all on this earth together.
No, I thank you
And
really for
yeah,
your initiative because as you said, yeah, I think it's incredible to first of all for you as a person to just go onto this quest of learning more about other languages and cultures, but yeah, providing it to your audience. And yeah, I really invite the audience to learn more about Senegal. I mean, the people, they have one of the most incredible people. They're very generous. They're welcoming. The slogan of Senegal is the country of teranga, teranga being hospitality. So go to Senegal, explore the country, talk to its people, and take advantage of this hospitality.
yes, I can't wait. I
Yes.
actually, one of my best friends, I'm like, hey, can we go to Dakar? Can we go to, I want to go in the springtime. I hope I can go, but I keep like,
Yes.
he's been a few times. My mom went like 25 years ago, she went.
Oh wow.
And like
Yeah.
I haven't been. I've only been to Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana
Mhm.
and South Africa, but it's calling me. Like it's
Yeah.
calling me. And I hear nothing but good things about Dakar and I cannot wait to get there. I cannot wait to go. You have double inspired me to visit ASAP. Awa, thank you.
No, thanks to you.
I like to end each episode on the same question, just on a little fun question. Do you have
Mhm.
any jokes, popular sayings, tongue
Mhm.
twisters, cool slang words, idioms, words of wisdom, or words of advice in Wolof to
Mhm.
share and to teach? You got to teach it to me.
Mhm. Well, I'll give you two things. One of them is a quote or like something that we say, and it's like boy de si àll nalagay nderay. It means that if you're going to die in the forest, let a lion kill you. And I think it's what it means. It's not so serious. What it means is that if you started doing such a big effort for a big goal, you might as well see it through. You might as well see it until the end. And I'm saying this because the experience of many international students abroad or people abroad is that yeah, you're far away from your family, so you're living through hard times. And so this is something that I keep in the back of my head to keep me going wherever I am in the world, and I miss too much home. And the second thing is a tongue twister, which is very funny. I don't know if I can say it, but it's like, I'll say it slowly. So it's like Fuki Gudi. No, wait. Fuki Buki Gudi. Fuki Buki Bachak. But I can't say it faster because it's a tongue twister. So I'll say it again. So Fuki Buki Gudi. Fuki Buki Bachak.
Okay.
So hard to say.
Okay, let's do both of them because I like them both equally.
Okay.
Let's start with the quote because I feel like I'm gonna
Mhm.
need that in my life at some point too. Um,
The quote is Boy de Chial.
Boy de Chaal
Nala Gainderai.
Nala Gandarai.
Gainderai.
Ge-
Gainde.
Gender.
Ga- Gainde.
Gai
Gainde is the lion. Yeah, gainde.
Gainderai.
No, gainde. Gainde.
Gainde.
Mhm.
Gainde.
And then rai is to kill. That's why.
Gainde. Rai is to kill.
hmm So boy de chial, if you're going to die in a forest, nala gainde rai. Let a lion kill you.
Boy de Chaala Nala
Mhm.
Gainde Rai.
Bravo.
I love
Yes.
that. I love that. Okay, and let's try I'm taking very phonetic notes on what I'm
Yes.
to
Well, I
try
can write it for you afterwards.
Yes, yes, please do. But
Yeah.
let's try the tongue twister
Mhm. Fuki buki gudi.
one more time.
Fuki buki gudi.
Is it Fuki with an F?
Yes,
Fuki, Buki,
gudi.
Goody?
Mhm. That means 10 hyenas in the night.
Okay.
And then fuki buki bachak. 10 hyenas during the day.
Fuki, Buki, Butchuck.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
But it has ch, k, g, and then it's so hard to say. I can say it fast. Fuki buki gudi, fuki buki bachak.
Oh my gosh. I gotta practice that one. Ah,
Yes. So fuki buki gudi,
Fuki, Buki, Goody?
fuki buki bachak.
Fuki, Buki, Butchuck.
Perfect. See, got it.
Oh,
Perfect. Now the challenge is to say it quickly.
Yeah, I'll practice that. I'll practice
You
that
gotta practice it.
on my own. I won't subject you to that. But thank you for teaching those to me, to us, to all of us. I hope people listening are practicing along with me. This has been such a fun conversation, Awa. Before I let you go, in Wolof, after you've been speaking to someone for quite some time, what would be the best way? You're going your separate ways. What would be the best way to say goodbye?
Ba bene.
Ba bene.
Literally until another time.
With a B? Ba bene?
Ba benen. Yeah, ba means until, benen literally means another, just another, but it's implied another time.
Ba benen.
Ba benen, yes.
Ba benen.
Yes.
Awa, thank you so much.
Ba benen.
Ba
Good
benen.
job.
I'll be talking to you soon. Bye.
Talk soon. Bye bye.